interviews leading up to this finals, but Faker came onto the scene and popped off early on in his career with his ability to use his physical, as we call it, and create his mechanics, his ability to make flashy plays in the mid lane, out-duel people. And at that time, he was far ahead of everyone else. And now, many, many years later, where he stands is one of the most experienced League of Legends pro in best of fives, in world championships, whether it's domestic or internationally. He not only defined how League of Legends was seen in the West, but I think he defined how gaming was seen to people who are not gamers. A legend in his own right is going to be commanding this team with a huge controversial coaching swap that they had mid-season. Most analysts, myself included, didn't think it was going to work out. And you know what? We were big time wrong.
It's quite ironic because both teams got better from that swap, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the crazy part, and it ties into something that we've seen a lot, which is also has been shown by T1 themselves, right? Gumayushi had some great moments in summer, but Teddy has just elevated this team to another level. And honestly, the same can be said for the impact that Danny has had on Damwon Kia ever since he's been back. Some of that zaniness, the counter picks, the flexibility that made Damwon such a multifaceted threat team to another level last year has come back.
He's back, and perhaps he has some secret inside information from the T1 side as well, something to think about. Again, though, the last time these two teams did face off, T1 was able to get the victory, and in large part due to this player's performance on the Thresh. Keria, just insane what he's able to do with that champion, and if you give that to him, I don't know what to say. The draft is a whole other topic that we have a lot to talk about here, and we have one awesome best of 5 to discuss it all.
For sure. Stardust on stage here, you know, coming up, so really stepping up big, but I think the real leader for this team right now is Faker, as I was mentioning before. But still, it's a really trying time for T1 fans. It's been a year of almosts. It's been a year of close calls, but never able to cross the finish line. And now when most vote against them, how amazing would it be if they actually get to win that third game and lift the LCK trophy here in 2021 ahead of their Worlds performance that we're looking forward to in just a month's time. That's what is so exciting about this series, is when you have this David and Goliath story like this, you always point to the underdog, and when the underdog is also the more popular team, you get really excited.
And it speaks to the quality of the LCK as well, that we can have the greatest player of all time, and he's the little guy going up against the big guy, right? Like that in of itself, I think, is insane. And it shows us not only how many talented players we have, but also that I still can't get over the fact for how long Faker has been dominant, how much he's been able to carry his team in the recent playoff performances, and the fact that there's still players that can somehow match him. And going into this draft, I personally am really wondering what are some of the prior picks. Are they going to come through the draft? The Jace, I think, is the most obvious one, because both of these two top laners absolutely love it. And I want to get into the draft. I want to know what's going to happen. I really can't wait, guys.
Look at this. We got a little bit of Mad Dog in the camera here from Owner.
Yeah, we didn't mention it, but I will say it now. It was on screen. Damwon Kia did choose blue side. They won the coin toss, and that was their choice. So they will be on blue side for this first draft. Of course, T1 will have first and second counter pick. And it's all going to start off right here, right now. I want to see that Jace priority, as you were mentioning, but I also look towards champions like the Rise right now, Twisted Fate, which was targeted against T1 in their playoff series. These are picks that you don't see necessarily in other regions prioritized this highly, but with these two teams, you certainly do.
Well, we're into draft, guys. Game number 1 starts, and you guys were talking about the Jace. I think Red Team might be forced to ban that every single time because both teams want it, and if it's left open, like GBM said, you just first pick it.
And the Aurelia, of course, an incredible power pick on the patch 11.16. The Aphelios ban is an interesting one, and also kind of mitigates the threat of that Thresh from Keria, right? That's the most popular combination, whereas you can go for the Jinx. Isn't as blindable, in my opinion. And the Renekton, we were wondering, is it still going to be a consistent... Yeah, it is still going to get banned away. And I love the Ziggs, because that is something that Ghost and Damwon Kia have used to neutralize the power of enemy bot lanes a lot.
Now, there's a lot of different things you could pick into this Rise. The Lucian that's left available, not a strong matchup there. We've seen oftentimes the LeBlanc chosen into this, but also Faker can pull out the Azir, which is being hovered right now. You do kind of point yourself towards late game scaling with this a little bit more, but it's a good lane matchup. They'll pivot away from it and look towards that Viego. Still an extremely strong pick. We're seeing it in all regions right now across playoffs.
Yeah, and the thing about the Viego is that it can be flexed, although Kana, it is his third most played alongside of Khan, so it's a takeaway, it's a flex. You don't have to throw it to the top lane, even though you might, as Azir will be picked, and that will be Faker's first choice, as Ashe and Camille follow it up for Damwon.
And already Damwon have a lot of the picks that they like. You pick away the Rise from T1, which is one of their main components in how they are able to not only find early game leads, but then turn it into very quick and snap map movements. And you get a utility AD carry for Ghost. He's looked incredible on the Ashe. Kind of hard to punish as well, has a lot of good matchups. And then the Camille getting picked here, to me, is... I don't know whether they were going for the read that it was indeed guaranteed going to be that Viego top, because Viego top, of course, not as strong on the current patch. Jungle is a lot more consistent, and it will be again. We saw this into semis as well. The Gwen for Kana.
Yeah, the Gwen coming through here. It's always a chance that it's flex to the jungle, but seems very unlikely at this current stage. And when you're T1 here, you're targeting jungles now because you know that that's going to be the strength that Damwon is looking for. Next, you take away the Xin Zhao here, which is going to give them a lot of mid-game control. You do not want this Camille to snowball out of control. The side lane pressure she can put off later on in the game is strong. Not as strong, though, with the Gwen coming through that you mentioned. You definitely have an answer now as T1. Both of these teams have really strong late-game power. I think what's missing here for T1 is a late-game scaling AD carry, because right now you have Ashe that is going to be great in terms of the support, is going to be able to set up a lot of team fights, but doesn't do as much damage as some of the options available here for T1.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you just go ahead and ban out Canyon's most played in the Diana, or do you just say, okay, doesn't look like they're going to want to play it with this comp, and in fact, they are going to take away the Tom Kench alongside of the Xin Zhao, so that will be the choice. As Thresh available, other AD carries available here as well.
And I would love for T1 to hold the counter pick for Carrier here, because I think you can, knowing your AD carry matchup, go and pick up something that matches up well into the Ashe, and by doing so, make use of Carrier's champion pool. This is a different approach where obviously you're gonna use the Leona, which is a much stronger power pick. Does really provide T1 with some much needed engage, so I don't mind this as much. And now it's up to Damwon to actually round out their compositions. The Rel is still available, which is something that Barrel in counterpick situations has absolutely loved. Don't know if they want to go for that one. The Braum is open, which is, yeah, feels very good into the T1
The
composition.
Braum is so strong into the Gwen and the Viego, not to mention hard engage that the Leona is going to try to offer you here. The slows are going to be massive. He'll go for the exhaust, and it does give you a lot more time to react if T1 engage, because you yourself already have the better engage. As you mentioned, the Leona's Solar Flare are going to be your best bet for T1 to actually start a team fight. You have a lot of follow-up once you do. You have the Emperor's Divide, as we will see this Trundle, which has been so popular in Korea, come through. Looks to be Canyon's jungle pick.
Wow. So if Damwon don't want to fight, they never have to. They also have a lot of different ways to open fights of their own. And look at this, we get Teddy on Ezreal for game number 1. This guy popped off so hard in the semis against Genji. If you missed that, you get to see the encore here.
This is what I was talking about. You know, when you have the Ashe, you do have a lot of engage opportunities, and with this composition, there's a lot of power in the side lanes. You can avoid team fights, as you mentioned, Valdez, but if you have a late game scaling AD carry here as T1, you've already got a scaling Azir here, and you're just heading towards making sure this late game carry can pop off. You have a lot of disengage options with this comp as well, and I personally really like T1's composition more.
I think the risk with T1's composition, though, is that you get run over in the early game. If you look at the Damwon Kia composition, they still have a lot of ways to force in the mid game, and the most existent early game power that you have available as T1 is exclusively at Viego, and Viego gets enabled when he can skirmish, but then you look at the Gwen, needs some time, Azir as well. So Damwon Kia very strong in terms of early game pressure points, very good side lane, but if T1 can make it through the early game, they're looking good.
Yeah, I mean, looking at a late game for both of these teams, I feel like either side could have a decent opportunity, right? T1 have an insane amount of scaling on their side, but there is so much pick potential and side lane potential from the side of Damwon as well. we could be in for a real treat here, especially if T1 are able to hold on early.
Yeah, it should be a really exciting one. I've got my money on T1's draft here. We'll see how it turns out on the Rift.
That's where it all matters. We have to get onto the Rift and see who will be able to take this game number 1. And guys, it is time. Let's jump into that game 1 right now. And here we go into the finals. Damwon up against T1. As you can see, guys, we have recorded a bunch of fans cheering. Unfortunately, with the current situation with the pandemic, of course, there are no fans here currently with us, but they are watching from around the world, including you guys listening to this right now. So thank you for being here, and I hope that we just embark on a absolutely fantastic journey of hopefully 5 games.
That's the dream, right? And it's exciting that we're finally in a venue for this finals, even if there aren't fans here. It definitely adds a lot of gravity to what is already a pretty amazing final story-wise. And Chronicler gets to have his first offline final in Korea.
Hey.
Very excited to have you having that opportunity.
Owner as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even Carrier, right, is someone that, if you go back, like, a lot of these players debuted during the time when there wasn't other venues to go to for a final. So that's also something that, of course, comes into play. And when we look at the early pathing here, leashless start for Canyon, which does mean that it's going to be a little bit easier for the Damwon Kia bot lane to take some early control. And both of these top laners have gone for the Ignite, of course, much more common, but does also increase the volatility. So if one of these two gets ahead, and with that in mind, I like the early pathing from Canyon towards top. It can mean so much for how that matchup plays out throughout the rest of the game.
For sure. And, you know, you do add a lot of risk with this, as you mentioned it too, if you're the one who is losing out on the top side of the map. So I have a bit of a trade here. But it's definitely one that, you know, it favors snowballing. And for both of these players, I think that has kind of been the snowbally style we've been seeing from them throughout the end of regular season and playoffs, as Cannon does path up, as you mentioned.
Oh, that was pretty quick. They're going for this. The flash comes in from Canyon. There's no flash on Kana, and a first blood at 2 minutes and 46 seconds. What a huge gank this early on in the game.
And I love the commitment there, knowing that there is no Ignite
Owner's getting in
available.
there. He's going to land that stun, but the teleport takes a while to get on top of him. Canyon, of course, no flash, and now the teleport coming in, but the stun landing once again, and everybody's getting into this fight here as the Ignite is not going to get the kill. Onto Canyon.
Baker flash!
Though, he's flashing for this one and going through the wall. One more auto would do it, but he can't see him over the wall. We're 3 minutes into the game, and Baker might just die to the turret, although Showmaker's just going to laugh at him. Lands it, throws up the thumbs up, and that's it for Faker over here.
This is a disaster. Faker uses both of his summoners, dies Kana, loses summoners, dies on the top side of the map. But this is a huge lead for Damwon Kia early on. The teleport, it takes so long to pull off. They use 2, and it does not work out.
And it's incredible when you see that hard commit from Damwon Kia on top side, knowing that Kana doesn't have a flash available, right? Using the pillar as an extension for the hook shot to make sure that you actually get on top. And I think that play in of itself is survivable. That's manageable. At least Kana will be able to get this waves. Kane says, thank you for the leash. But then, I like the idea behind what T1 tries to do that, because do not forget, this is a Viego in the early game. If he can get a single soul, he can start those resets, you can turn that around, but the response from Damwon Kia is just too clutch.
Yeah, and you mentioned the pillar was so perfect to actually extend the hook shot, and that's where this happens here, as Canyon flashes forward as well. And look at that, the pillar just barely gives the hook shot enough edge. And Kana goes down, then he teleports right back in because Owner is here. But by the time he calls the teleport on this ward, it's already too late. So Faker feels like he's going to double down. It's a bit of sunk cost fallacy here as T1 all in on this push, and it just does not work out.
Yeah, keep in mind this wave was pushing into Faker's turret, so he wasn't able to pick up a lot of that farm. By the time he got back, I think actually Owner had to pick it up, and yeah, Faker uses his flash. He has to run underneath the turret to at least force Showmaker's flash, but as Showmaker, you're like, oh, thank you very much. I mean, we were very good in the early game, but now we're exceptional.
Yeah, that's a lot of CS lost. Being down a summoner spell really hurts your options as Faker, especially once you hit level 6. That Emperor's Divide kill pressure isn't as strong anymore.
One upside is that Showmaker, as Velvis pointed out, did have to use his flash, which in terms of Ryze, with a lack of escapes, is still going to have to play a lot more careful once that Shurima Shuffle does become available. But the main thing that this does for Damwon Kia is it alleviates the strengths that they have, right? Because while I think that, as you pointed out earlier, their scaling is good, it is also just incredibly hard to play into T1's composition in late because they can do so many things. They can poke, they can hard engage onto you, their skirmishing is great, their team fighting is great, they have a lot of really hard to get on backline threats, and by being able to get these early kills.
Oh,
man, they're run warping.
Poor Kana, man. He just can't catch a break. This is Ryze and Trundle. How about Camille? How about all three of them get in there and bully? He's just going to burn down to the Ignite as Khan. He doesn't have to look at the explosion. He knows he got the kill.
He's got such a massive lead now, Showmaker does, but also Khan, and so much power in the mid game with this composition as well. And look at what the items are for Showmaker here. Builds a little bit of extra magic resist early for this, so he knows he can actually make an aggressive play like this without any threat of being traded. And I mean, you're such in a massive lead now. You're going to get turret plate gold. And yes, the bottom side of the map is going a little bit Teddy-sided, but I think you could allow that when you consider how much gain they get on the top side.
The cool thing is Barrel was also roaming towards top in case that did turn into another extended skirmish. Ghost was just chilling 1v2 in the bot lane, not really being threatened by the pre-6 Leona and Ezreal, so he can just sit there, farm up the wave, be fine. If he loses a couple of creeps, doesn't really matter.
Yeah, this Realm Warp is just so well played. Faker's, you know, just under his turret. He can't make any sort of counterplay, doesn't have teleport. And this is the power of rotating mid lanes right now in this meta. You use your teleport early for any reason, and Ryze is going to crush you in this situation. Twisted Fate is going to crush you in this situation. You're going to fall further and further behind.
Yeah, and Showmaker with this lead, as you mentioned, Wolf, he got that extra magic resist, made that into the Merc Tread, so now he's got movement speed. Winning there against Faker, he can move up, he can pressure a bit more, and they're just going to have multiple winning lanes here, which is really what you do want with Damwon Kia's composition, which we did touch on a little bit at the end of the draft. And you would have to imagine that with this lead, they should be able to secure early Rift Herald in this game, maybe even the Infernal, to try to get that and take it away from T1's immense scaling. Lots of options here for Damwon.
It's really hard for Teddy to sit bottom as well and get an advantage because Damwon Kia are going to hold their bot duo as well because they know they have an advantage. They don't need to rotate first. And in fact, Teddy is heading up first. They are going to start this. T1 are so desperate.
They're going to bring everybody up to this one. And you can see the late rotation is coming in from Ghost and Barrel as well. They're going to spot this out. Damwon, they say, no, we're going to want to fight you here. You're not just going to get this free objective, but the Rift Herald's already pretty low. Need to hit that eye, trying to get it down there. And now the engage's going to be started off onto the level 6 Trundle. The exhaust used onto him as well. And they can't even kill him. They finally do get him down, but Faker's getting low now as Ghost is coming in from behind, but here comes T1 on the front side trying to take out Showmaker. That Ryze not doing enough early on in this game, and T1 will be able to take the 2-for-1 plus the Rift Herald in this fight.
And after such a cleanly played early couple of skirmishes from Damwon Kia, I think they should have just let the Rift Herald go. When it's half health, by the time your Ashe is around your Raptors, you're not going to make it. Just rotate back, let them have that objective, because now they're obviously starting a fight from a position where you're always going to be at a man disadvantage.
Yeah, you get Canyon here, stun locked, you know, you have the knock up there from the Azir, and it's really just a war of attrition you can't win without Ghost being here. Also didn't use his arrow until very late. Could have tried to use that for a little bit of extra appeal. Doesn't do so. They gain nothing from this. And the risk was just so high, as you mentioned.
And this is something we've seen a lot of LCK teams struggle with, right? Including the best. It's like the Rift Herald, it's like some kind of magnetic force. It pulls everybody in Korea to it. We have to fight over Rift Heralds. Doesn't matter who you are. And Damwon, I can understand, you know, with their early game power and their early lead, they wanted to fight over it. But as Chronicler said, like, sometimes you just don't respond in time, and you have to let it go.
And that's okay as well. The ironic thing is that even with that happening, currently the gold lead for Damwon Kia is still roughly the same, meaning that until that Rift Herald actually drops, there's not the biggest lead. As Invade does come through here, Owner should spot that momentarily. Can see that still up. Yeah, he just pieces out.
Yeah, he's just going to get out of here. But yeah, as you mentioned, the gold lead still stands for Damwon Kia. They still have a really nice lead in the top lane, which is the most important, I think, part of this. The mid lane, you got a nice lead as Showmaker. You're still very comfortable here. So things need to get a lot worse before you're feeling comfortable as T1, but this definitely makes your mid game a lot smoother than it was otherwise just moments before.
Teddy has played 60 games of Ezreal in the LCK. He is 5-0 on the pick this season, and he gets it again. So that was actually their last pick as well in the draft, and he wanted to show that he could carry once again here in the finals. Very excited to see that now with T1 getting a bit of a blow back after taking that Rift Herald, if he can pop off.
And both teams have very low Dragon percentages when it comes to a lot of our other teams in the LCK as Ghost.
He is just going to cleanse there at the end. The Zenith Blade not landing onto him, so doesn't even have to flash. They're trying to get some pressure down here. Canyon, though, waiting in the wings. Owner looking to potentially drop that Rift Herald, but it will not amount to much.
Yeah, this topside play, though, could happen as well. You got to be careful as Kana. T1 really want to collapse down here to get that Drake control, though. Faker's here.
Looks like they may have wanted to drop the Rift Herald after a pick, which would have been really nice for the snowball, and then you maybe even get the dragon, but not gonna happen. As Owner thinking about dropping it mid now. We got to fight up in the top side. The needles are coming out. Khan is gonna miss the hook shot as the damage is coming out here with the ignite, but trying to turn it back. Khan will be able to do it. I'm not even sure if he knew himself he was gonna win that fight.
All according to plan, misses the hook shot, and if you hit that hook shot, you go over the wall, you're fine. If you use it to go back into the Gwen, you're fine. But I did not expect him to somehow still win the 1v1, and that is the payoff of having your finished Mythic. That is the payoff of what Damwon Kia has been able to do thus far.
Exactly, you have that extra dueling power, and Showmaker was looking to Realm Warp top several times. He was rotating over, he was roaming, didn't actually need to do so in order to get this kill, actually ends up keeping it here. T1 end up losing out on that bottom trade as well. Don't get the Drake control they're looking for. And suddenly, you know, this looks like a fantastic position yet again for Damwon Kia. That top side control is going to be a problem for the rest of this game.
I mean, any Camille that's 3-0 is going to be a problem, as Beryl seems to know something is amiss. Just kind of hanging out there, and Owner just gets away with stealing the red buff, gets over the wall. Having a pretty good start, I would say, to the game. Doesn't look too nervous.
Perfect crime. Just goes in, avoids anyone, and is able to pick up the red buff. And it's those type of tiny wins that, let's not forget, Khan?
Oh, Khan, he doesn't have his Hextech ultimatum, but the sticking power of this Camille is kind of insane right now. And you can see the amount of damage that he has anyway. He's going to push Kana all the way out. We had Showmaker roaming up to the top side as well.
Exactly what T1 has done in so many of their games.
Kana, and you can see that Kana's not able to get in range, so. And look at what's happening down on the bottom side as well. Karia's not here yet to stem the bleeding up in the top side.
Exactly, when Karia goes up here to help relieve that pressure, you see pings instantly go down for Ghost and Beryl. They're looking to push that turret. They know they can force Teddy out of lane.
Khan seemingly still wanting to face check. He's like, yeah, sure. I'm fine. I mean, he had vision of Karia sitting in the brush, and he doesn't care. Karia blows everything except the exhaust, I suppose. And Khan just walks away.
Riftmaker's still not ready here for Kana. It's very difficult for him to actually end up doing any sort of extended trading. We're going to watch this fight once again. And like you said, the hook shot doesn't actually connect, but you know what? At the end of the day, look at how much sustain he has. The Mythic advantage here.